Emma, your teacher, Mrs. Holm, called again. She said your grades are appalling and you don't pay attention in class. Why can't you be more like your sister? Yawn. Not this speech again. It's been like this ever since I started elementary school. In my mom's eyes, only my sister, Evelyn, inherited our dad's intelligence, while I'm just the senseless member of the family. Ugh, as if. She's only good with useless books. Bet she doesn't know anything practical, like how Dad's Ethernet company works and such. But whatever, I don't care. I'm full, I announced as I got up and went to my little headquarters, the garage. I was busy working on my own personal project, so I didn't have time to give a hoot about who my mom's favorite child is. Oh, you must be wondering what I'm working on. Well, this device broadcasts Wi-Fi. Sounds familiar, right? But my device is able to broadcast across the entire city. Not only that, the connection is stronger and much more stable than the Wi-Fi people use at home. And it's more convenient without all the cables and stuff. This is without a doubt my proudest work ever. And what a coincidence that a few days earlier at school, Mrs. Holm announced that for the first time, the school was organizing an invention contest. Normally, I give school activities a miss, but this time was different. This contest could be fun, right? There was no time to waste, so I put all my spare time, day and night, into making my invention contest ready. And you won't believe what happened. I won first prize! And that's not all. One of the judges, Mr. Johnson, was so interested in my invention that he offered to invest in it. At first, I was kind of scared and hesitated to agree because, I was still in high school. But this was an opportunity of a lifetime, so how could I deny it, right? So after that, Mr. Johnson sorted out a manufacturing company and office space for me downtown. This is cool, but I prefer to work in my garage. It's just more convenient that way, with me still being at school and all. I upgraded my device and launched it to the public. And you know what? It was a huge success. Pretty much everybody in the city got rid of their old, laggy Wi-Fi devices and accessed mine. Then one day, I got a call from the local news channel asking to interview me and my family at home. Oh my god, yes! Oh, there's just one snag. I hadn't told my family about it yet because, I don't know. Maybe I just know there's no way they'd believe me? Like the time I got an A in my physics exam, and my mom instantly asked if I cheated. But, well, whatever. This is much bigger than that. So I quickly ran downstairs to the living room and excitedly told my family that the invention benefiting the town was mine. But Mum and Evelyn burst out laughing. So you're telling me that this Wi-Fi, which is broadcasting across the entire city, is your invention? Yeah, Mum, it's mine. Then Mum and Evelyn laughed even louder. Honey, it's bad enough you're failing at school. Please don't start lying. Ugh, forget about it. Why did I even try? Then, the morning after, when the doorbell rang, my mom opened it and saw a reporter and a cameraman. She couldn't believe her eyes. Mum and Evelyn exchanged panicked looks, then rushed upstairs to prepare. It was so hilarious. The hysterics continued as they interviewed my parents. I watched my nervous, sweaty dad stand there like an awkward statue, while Mum began bragging about me like, as soon as Emma was born, I knew she was a genius like her dad. I always encourage her to pursue her dreams. Jeez, and the Oscar goes to my mom. I didn't know she could act that well. To be honest, since I could remember, Mom never said anything nice about me. Ever. But now that she knew I was the mastermind behind the town's Wi-Fi, she would probably treat me differently, right? Wrong. Then one night I came downstairs for a glass of milk and overheard Mom and Dad talking in the living room. Emma is such a selfish child. How badly will this affect your business? The truth is, the company's going through tough times. But don't worry, we're trying everything we can. Huh? Did I do something? And what's wrong with Dad's company? I tried to eavesdrop more, But suddenly I heard my dad standing up from the couch, so I quickly ran upstairs to my room. The next day, Dad forgot to take his lunch with him to work, so Mom asked me to take it over. But when I got to his company floor, it was deserted. Huh? Where was everybody? Did everybody get a day off or something? But that couldn't be it, right? That evening, over dinner, I asked Dad. I went to your office at midday, but not a single person was there. What's going on? Mom suddenly put her cutlery down and gave Dad a shocked look. Is what Emma just said true? Dad lowered his head and sighed out. Yes, it's true. I temporarily shut the company last week. I didn't want you all to worry, so I didn't tell you. I'm sorry. What? How could you? You said you would fix it. That's when it hit me. But I deeply prayed it wasn't the truth. So I asked him, is it because of my device? Dad didn't answer me. He just glared sadly down at his dinner. But I knew what his silence meant. I was right. Suddenly, Evelyn stood up and screamed in my face. It's all your fault! You invented that stupid device, and now Dad's business is at stake. That's so typical of you. You never think before you act. Then she stomped off upstairs. I just sat there speechless. I just wanted my family to be proud of me, but instead, it seemed like they despised me more than ever. Then Dad turned to me and softly said, Emma, this isn't your fault. I was kind of waiting for my mom to say something, anything at all, but she didn't. She just cleaned up the table. I felt really bad about what happened to Dad. But hey, now I had to work even harder so I could provide for my family, right? After that, Mom completely ghosted me. As for my sister, whenever our paths crossed, she gave me a dagger look and muttered out mean comments like, let's see how long it takes for your precious business to fail. I tried to ignore her, but then she took it too far. One Sunday, I was in my garage working away when suddenly I heard loud noises coming from outside. I opened the garage door to see a crowd of people holding signs saying, we lost our jobs because of you, and no job, no future. My God, they were protesters. I think they were from my dad's office. Wait a minute. I spotted a familiar face. Evelyn? She was holding a big sign saying, my dad lost his job because of you. Eventually, Dad came out and dispersed the crowd. Then he called an emergency family meeting. How could you do that to me? The correct question would be, how could you do that to Dad? Thanks to you, dozens of people have lost their jobs. You're making people's lives miserable.
Enough, both of you. Evelyn, what you did was wrong. Families are supposed to support each other.
But Dad,
Didn't you just hear what I said?
Evelyn gave me a dirty look. Then she ran off to her room. I looked at Mom, who was leaning against the wall with her arms folded. Did she agree with what Evelyn did? Or was she on my side? My God, please say something. But to my surprise, after that, my mother started talking to me again, and she was actually being nice. She even started cleaning my room and workspace. Whoa, this was new. Had she finally accepted me? Then one day, I received tons of emails complaining about my Wi-Fi. It took me all day, but I finally found the cause of the problem. My laptop. Somebody had tampered with it. It didn't take a genius to figure out who it was. Evelyn, duh. But I needed proof, so I set up a trap. The next evening, when everybody was having dinner, I ran downstairs, quickly grabbed a piece of bread and said, I need to go run some errands. Oh, and can you please stay out of the garage, as I'm uploading some important files? Mom and Dad nodded and smiled at me. Evelyn, on the other hand, just rolled her eyes and continued eating. Well, at least I knew my plan was in motion. I walked outside and hid behind the bushes. So, what's my plan, you ask? Well, I set up my laptop so that when anyone opened it, it would automatically send a notification to my phone and turn on the camera so I could see who it was. I waited for an hour, but still nothing. Then suddenly, my phone beeped. Somebody was opening my laptop. They hadn't switched the light on yet, so it was too dark to see them, but I was 100% sure who it was. Time to expose. What are you doing sneaking out here? Evelyn? What was she doing out here? Wait, if Evelyn was here, then who was it in the garage? Not answering Evelyn's question, I ran like crazy into the garage to capture this intruder. And as soon as I turned on the lights, I couldn't believe who was messing with my laptop. It was Mom! What on earth was going on? I called a family meeting and told everyone what Mom did. Dad and Evelyn looked shocked and asked Mom why she did it. I just couldn't stand seeing your dad suffer anymore. He put his life into that company, and now he's just a laughing stock. Do you realize our neighbors and relatives have been gossiping about him? They think it's so pitiful that he lost out to his own daughter. So I did what any self-respecting wife would do. Was she serious? Why didn't she just talk to me? All I ever wanted was for her to talk to me. Nothing else. But no, she decided to go behind my back and try to sabotage my business instead. After her betrayal, I'd had enough. So I didn't speak to her and avoided her as much as possible. It was one thing for Mom to be cold towards me, but I never thought she was capable of doing this. This went on for weeks, and it got kinda tedious. Trust me, it's no fun trying to avoid someone in your own home. But then one day, I arrived back from school and saw Dad sitting in a corner in the living room, repairing his PC. Geez, he looked so miserable. That's when the truth hit me. This was his passion, and I took it away from him. Suddenly, I understood why Mom did what she did. She saw how disheartened he was, but knew he'd never say anything to me, because he's always supportive. But how can I fix everything? Should I give everything up so that my dad can reopen his company again? Ugh, why was this so hard to figure out? Wait a minute. I think I have the solution. You must be wondering what my dad was doing here. Well, I came up with the idea that we should work together. My dad's a pro with technology, so it didn't take long to show him how things work around here. Oh, and since my business has grown, we were able to employ some of his former work employees too. With Dad around to help, I have time to focus on my studies. Even Evelyn started helping out, and she was so good at it, I made her dad's assistant. Talk about a proper family business. Ha! As for Mom, we had a really long talk. I finally told her how awful her attitude towards me made me feel, and she apologized for everything she had done. I eventually forgave her. I knew she did that just because she loves Dad very much. So, after all that drama, we're now just one big happy family. Ugh, look at them flirting. What an eyesore. But don't get it wrong. Trust me, this is no happy family. That woman there isn't my mom. She's Rochelle, our housemaid. I repeat, housemaid. But it looks like she has her sights set on becoming my stepmom. Ugh. We only hired her because after my mom passed away, Dad and I struggled to deal with our grief, and our clumsiness as well, so tidying the house didn't take priority. I suppose Rochelle was an okay maid. Can't deny that she's a good cleaner, and her cooking is tasty. However, recently, I've noticed that she always cooks Dad's favorite meals. Also, they laugh and flirt and constantly give each other these gooey-eyed looks. Yuck! Today, she even took out her handkerchief and attentively wiped my dad's sweaty forehead. Who does she think she is? She definitely wanted to hypnotize Dad. If she thought she'd have a slot in this house, she was totally wrong. I needed to do something about this. I had to talk to Dad right away. Dad, Mom didn't pass away that long ago, but it looks like you've already lined up her replacement. Didn't you hurt Mom enough by reconnecting with your ex right before she died?
What do you mean, replacement? Brittany, you're being childish and unreasonable.
I don't know, and I don't care. But I want Rochelle to get out of our house immediately. She's for sure trying to get something out of you.
Okay, fine. if you insist, but make sure you find a new housemaid to replace her.
Ugh. So it turns out that finding a new maid who's actually good is nearly impossible. Dozens of people came to try out, but none of them were as considerate as Rochelle. Okay, after all, we still needed a maid, so I reluctantly let Rochelle stay until I found someone new. This didn't mean I was going to let my annoyance for her slide. I decided that while I was stuck in the same house as her, I may as well play some tricks on her to let out my anger. When she decided to cook, again, the divine chicken soup that my dad loved so much, I kindly added a little salt to make it more savory. But somehow, my dad still praised her delicious food. He must just be flattering her, right? So I tried it for myself. What? How could she do that? It tasted amazing. Ugh. Another time, I copied this trick I saw on TikTok by sticking layers of food wrap on Rochelle's door, then acting like there was an emergency. Quick! The oven is making weird noises. I think something's burning. Rochelle quickly ran out of the room and I couldn't help but laugh my head off. Her face was really funny. She then gave me this bewildered look and smiled helplessly. Ugh. Why did this woman never get mad? Okay then, let's step it up a notch. I decided to play the ultimate trick. Knowing that Rochelle was scared to death of cockroaches, I cut a cockroach shape out of paper and put it behind the fabric of her nightlight. That night, I was dozing off when I heard a screechy scream, "Ah!" coming from Rochelle's room. Aha! Success! But she was so terrified that she fainted. Oops! Do you know what the most annoying thing is? Even after all the trouble I've caused her, Rochelle was still super sweet to me. She was always offering me cookies and asking me about my day and stuff. I felt like she was trying to play the role of a mother, and I didn't like that at all. She couldn't fool me. I knew she only put up with me to please my dad. Thanks to Rochelle, I could never be at ease, even in my own home. But recently, a very special person has come into my life and lit up my mood. It was totally by chance. That day, it had rained like crazy, so there were puddles everywhere. I was on my way home from the grocery store when a car drove whizzing by. I thought I was going to get a free bath, but then suddenly, an arm pulled me back and shielded me with his body. Just like in a romantic movie, standing there was a boy, soaking wet, asking if I was okay. Aww, he had totally swept me off my feet. We walked together for a while, and he told me his name's Chris, and he lives in the next neighborhood. That's it! I needed to find a way to impress Chris and also thank him for helping me. So, after some careful thinking, I decided to bake him a cake. I'd seen Rochelle bake before. It looked easy peasy. So I baked one and gave some to my best friend Sue to try. But she spat it out and said, "Ew, gross." I sadly sat in the kitchen, staring at my pathetic cake, and wondered where I'd done wrong. That's when Rochelle stepped into the room. But to my surprise, instead of laughing at me, she patted me on the shoulder.
Come here. I'll teach you how to cook.
Rochelle was a good cook, so I'd be stupid not to learn from her. This doesn't mean I like her, though. I just want to win my crush's heart. So after that, each day after school, Rochelle gave me a cooking lesson. Okay, so maybe she wasn't as bad as I first thought. We tried out different recipes together and came up with our own perfect formula. And finally, I could bake a lovely heart-shaped chocolate cake by myself to confess my love to Chris. And you know what? He said yes. I was so deeply in love with Chris that I totally forgot about my conflict with Rochelle. Chris often came over to my place. My dad and Rochelle loved him. So now, besides my dad's favorite food, Rochelle also makes Chris's favorites too. She's incredible. She could remember everything Chris loves and hates, even the trivia, like he's allergic to peanuts. We were just like a family, and I have to admit, it felt kinda good. And then, out of literally nowhere, the shock of my life happened.
My dad passed away from cancer. I didn't even know he was ill. As you might guess, I totally broke down and didn't want to do anything after that. My mom and dad had both left me, just within a single year. But at least I still had Rochelle and Chris beside me. Rochelle took care of me like I was her actual daughter. I was going through such a tough time in life, but having them around made me feel like I wasn't completely alone. The grief had to fade away eventually, and it's gonna be okay from now on, I thought. Until one day, I was baking cupcakes when my dad's lawyer appeared and showed me the will. Turns out, my dad had left the house to me, but only on the condition that I had a guardian, some woman named Laura. Huh? That's odd. I don't know anyone named Laura, but wait, I think I've heard this name from someone. Oh, my mom. When she was in her last days, Mom once told me that my dad had been talking to his ex again, and her name was Laura. Could it be her? Did he seriously make his ex my guardian? Unbelievable! I had to get to the bottom of this. But how could I find this mystery Laura? I had no family. Well, besides my Uncle Colin, who was living in France. So I contacted him and told him everything. He flew back at once, and although I hadn't seen him in years, I couldn't hold back my emotions and ended up sobbing on his shoulder. And then he told me the horrible truth. Laura is none other than the woman who had just walked through the door. It was Rochelle, the woman who had been living in my house. I couldn't believe my ears. What on earth is going on? So Rochelle moving in was no coincidence? My dad sneakily snuck her in as a maid so they could be together? My pain and disappointment were overwhelming, but I had to calm down so I could think rationally. I knew I needed to be smart and outplay Rochelle at her own game. Since then, I started watching Rochelle and noticed something strange. Rochelle and Chris were a bit too close and intimate. I often saw them whispering to each other when they thought I wasn't looking. What did this mean? Could it be that Rochelle was trying to coax my boyfriend into one of her dark schemes? Or, worse still, was the guy I loved cheating on me with an older woman? My suspicions deepened. When a few days later, Chris told me he was sick, so I had to take the school bus for a couple of days. And Rochelle also asked me for a few days off. Could it just be coincidence? I didn't think so. So I decided to be a detective for once. Right after Rochelle left, I started following her. And with no surprise, she went to my boyfriend's house.
Hi, Mom!
Excuse me? Mom? She's his mom? So that means she not only flirted with my father, but also planted her son to distract me to take over my family's property? I trusted them. How could they be so cruel? Suddenly, I remembered a detail that I didn't notice until now. After eating the food she'd cooked, for some reason, my father became weaker and weaker and eventually passed away. Did she poison him? If that's the case, then she really is a poisonous snake in human disguise. I immediately broke up with Chris and fired Rochelle, then went home and told Uncle Colin everything. At least I had him on my side.
Now what we need to do is refute her custody of the property. I'll take care of everything, and you just have to do what I say.
Then, Uncle Colin helped me prepare a lawsuit against Rochelle and her son for fraud. Those two will pay the price for what they did to my father and me. Oh, but the thing is, now Rochelle didn't live here. It felt so empty. I was so angry with her, but I also found myself missing her too. I loved and trusted her. And Chris too. And feelings like that don't just vanish overnight, but when I was still thinking about it, there was the lawyer. Again! And he was accompanied by Uncle Colin. What's happening now?
Miss Brittany Jensen hereby transfers the entire estate of 25 Oakwell House to Mr. Colin Jensen, as signed by both parties.
Huh? Signed? When did I sign that? I snatched the paper and shouted, "Scam! I never saw this paper!" Uncle, what is this? Please say something.
I don't know. Just follow the legal documents.
No, 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 no! So Uncle Colin was just pretending to care, when really he just wanted to trick me into signing over my house? Oh God. Thinking about it, it must have been that day. The day where he gave me a bunch of papers to sign, claiming that they were about me suing Rochelle and Chris. OMG, the lying con! At the time, I'd been so upset that I only skimmed the first page without looking at the following ones. I was too careless.
From tomorrow, Miss Brittany Jensen will have to return all assets to Mr. Colin Jensen. You have 24 hours to prepare.
I tried shouting at my uncle, and then I tried reasoning with him, but he didn't care. He just smirked at me and told me that he was just taking what was rightfully his. Ugh, what a vile man. So now, I have nothing left. I was kicked out of my own house and deceived by my own uncle. I don't know why I accidentally passed Chris's house just as he opened the door to take a delivery, and our eyes met. I turned and started to run away, but Chris caught up with me and grabbed my hand. Even after the awful way I treated them both, Rochelle and Chris still invited me inside and made me dinner. I ashamedly told them what happened. Then Rochelle told me everything. It turns out that my father found out that he had cancer a while ago, but he didn't tell me because he saw how upset I was after losing Mom, and he was afraid I would worry too much. Rochelle saw his health deteriorating and figured out what was wrong, so she volunteered to take care of him because she still cared for him. But as a friend, nothing more. As for the will, my dad understood Uncle Colin all too well and didn't trust him, so he gave custody to Rochelle. But unexpectedly, in the end, I still stupidly fell into his trap.
As for Chris, I really didn't know you two knew each other until you brought him home. But at that time, I didn't want to confess I was his mother and affect your relationship. I'm sorry, Brittany.
Britt, please stay here with me and Mom. We'll get through this tough time together, okay?
That's right, darling. No matter what, we'll never abandon you.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood you both.
It's okay. Everything will be fine from now on. You'll never have to do this alone.
Yeah, every dog has its day. This is totally not wrong. My life is nothing like my previous wealthy one, but I have something that my conniving, vulturous uncle doesn't have, and that's people who love and care about me. What my uncle did was wrong, and Rochelle and Chris are helping me to make a legal case against him. As for now, well, I still haven't given up on my passion for cooking, and still practice with my master every day. And you know what? I just won first prize at the city cooking competition. Right, I better go, as I have a big treat planned for
Dad, where have you been? I was so worried.
Go away. Don't touch me.
I froze on the spot, not understanding why my once kind-hearted father was being so cold toward me. I snapped out of my daze and tried helping him forward, but he flinched me away. My eyes started to tear up, and I didn't know what to do. Then another woman appeared. She quickly helped him up and smiled at me. Don't worry, sweetie. I'll take care of him. Excuse me? Who was she? My mother had barely been put in the ground, and Dad had already moved on? I couldn't watch any more of this, so I quickly left the room. How could things go downhill this quickly? My life used to be so simple and perfect. I had a loving family. I was always on top at school. People always complimented me on how I inherited both the beauty and intelligence of my mom and dad. But then a traffic accident happened and took Mom away from us. Ever since then, my polite, well-mannered, loving dad changed into a cruel, bitter drunk who seemed to despise me. Ugh. The next day, I arrived home from school with the worry about what state my dad would be in. But, why was Uncle Alfred on my doorstep? I invited him inside, and there was Dad, slumped on the couch, surrounded by empty beer cans. As soon as he saw us, he slurred out and started throwing the cans at us. Uncle Alfred then took me to dinner so we could have a talk, and I couldn't help the tears as I blurted out how bad things were at home. He patted my arm and said,
Your father's been through a lot. I think it's best if we give him time to sort himself out. I think you should come live with us for a while.
So that's how I ended up living with Uncle Alfred, Aunt Madeline, and my cousin Charity. At first, everything seemed fine. As bad as it sounds, it was a relief to be away from Dad and to be able to properly process my thoughts for once. I was so grateful to Uncle Alfred for giving me a second home. But then he went away on a business trip, and everything changed. I was walking back to my room when Charity appeared in her doorway and tripped me up. As I stumbled and landed on my hands and knees, she snorted out, "Yes, that's right. Bow down to your queen, you hideous peasant. You should know your place in this house." Ugh, that girl was such a pain. Since her dad went away, she wouldn't quit tormenting me. It's ironic that her name is Charity, but she doesn't seem kind at all. I'd had enough of her cruel jibes. This had just got personal. So I angrily replied, "I know you're just jealous of me because your grades suck and you're not as pretty." Charity's eyes welled up. Then she shoved past me and ran to her mom. I followed after her and explained what happened to my Aunt Madeline. She frowned at Charity, then scolded her. Phew. Fortunately, I had Aunt Madeline on my side. Anyway, justice is served, right? Wrong, as it wasn't long before my aunt's attitude changed toward me too. One time, I was helping my aunt cook a casserole when the doorbell rang. It turned out to be an old friend of my aunt. As soon as she saw me, she happily said, "Wow, it's only been a few years, but Charity sure has grown up. The older she gets, the more she looks like Alfred, doesn't she? Look at her eyes and smile." I stared at Aunt Madeline in confusion and saw her mood immediately shift. That night when I brought the casserole dish out, Aunt Madeline took one bite, then spat it into a napkin. "You're clumsy, thoughtless, and now an awful cook? Be a bit more useful, will you?" I stared at her open-mouthed, unable to find the words to say. Then Charity piped in, "Please, never make this again. Casserole is so gross. Just like you." Then she smirked at me as she dumped the entire plate into the trash. Weird. Didn't Aunt Madeline tell me to cook this because it was Charity's favorite? It seemed like life in this house wasn't going to get any easier. Over the next week, their mocking and snide comments continued. One day I styled my hair in a different way, and Charity sniggered at me. "What's that? It looks like you got a lobster on your head." Have you ever considered dyeing your hair, by the way? Because blonde really doesn't suit you. On another occasion, I was invited to a party, so I put on this cute dress, but when I walked downstairs in it, they both stared at me. My aunt said, "Oh, dear. Is that piece of rag making you look even chubbier than usual? Or is it because you've been so well fed living with us?" Another time, I was sitting at the breakfast table, dabbing lip gloss onto my lips, when Charity yanked it off me. As I tried to grab it back, she sniggered out, "What for? Putting this on your gross lips just makes you look desperate. No one wants to kiss you anyway." Gosh, my patience with this girl was wearing very thin. Worse still, Aunt Madeline overheard the whole thing, but she just laughed. I didn't understand why they were being like this. I knew I wasn't ugly or fat, and far from it. I know I'm pretty, as I was always complimented on my glossy long hair. Well, until I moved here, anyway. This was so confusing. Why were they jealous of me? It turns out that being too beautiful was not easy. Ugh. Things got trickier when my dad, who's also the school principal, returned to work after his time off. He totally ignored me, and it made me feel terrible. Then I arrived home from school to Aunt Madeline fussing over me and asking if I wanted anything to eat. Huh? What? Oh, I see. Uncle Alfred was back from his work trip. Ugh! It was time I exposed this mother-daughter duo's fake act once and for all. So that evening, I volunteered to cook. Yep, you guessed it. I made the casserole dish. As I brought it out, Charity accidentally shouted, "Ew! I already told you I hate this dish." Aunt Madeline turned pale, and Charity gave this gawping, shocked look. Then I dropped to my knees and pleaded, "I know I'm wrong. Please don't punish me anymore. I don't want to sleep in the basement again." Uncle Alfred looked very confused, so I continued. "I forgot that Charity hates this dish. I've been punished several times, but I still keep on messing up. I'm the one to blame." "What is this? I go away for a few weeks and come back to carnage?" He ordered Aunt Madeline into their room for a private chat. "We're not even related. Don't expect my mother and I to be nice to you," she said, then stormed off. What? What did Charity mean? Of course we were related. Aunt Madeline was my dad's sister, right? I wanted to know what was going on, so I hid behind the door and listened in on their conversation. Tell me the truth. Teresa is your child with Claire, isn't she? I was taken aback. Claire? My mother? Had I misheard her? I know. Mark told me. The day Claire had the accident, they ran some blood tests, and he found out Teresa's blood type didn't match his. Obviously, she's not his biological daughter, and she looks just like you. Now tell me, did you and Claire cheat behind our backs? You used to be in love with her before you married me. So Dad treated me like that because he found out I'm not his own daughter? And Alfred and my mom used to be in love before she got married to my dad? Explain to me! Enough! Alfred finally spoke up. I have nothing to explain to you. Hearing footsteps toward me, I rushed to my room, closed the door, then crawled into my blanket pretending to be asleep. Suddenly, I heard the door open. It was Alfred. Teresa, let's get out of here. I packed a bag and left with my Uncle Alfred. We moved into a small apartment not too far from his house. Even though he took care of me a lot, he never mentioned that day ever again. I didn't dare to ask either. So we just let it slide. He had to be my real dad, right? He just wasn't ready to talk about it yet. I tried to avoid Charity as much as possible, but this wasn't always easy as we went to the same school. It wasn't like I was scared of her or anything, it was just awkward. Then one day, I walked along the corridor to see flyers stuck to lockers, doors, windows, and floating around the floor. They all had a picture of my face on them, and scrawled across them was, "This fraud is the product of her cheating mom and a married man." Everyone was giving me dirty looks and whispering about me. I panicked and rushed out of there, but I wasn't looking where I was going and bumped straight into a jock, and standing next to him was Charity. Enjoy the fame? These flyers were specially made for you. Right at that moment, my father appeared holding a flyer. He waved it in front of her. What is this? Who allows you to trash the school with this rubbish? Leave Teresa alone. I couldn't cope with my father right now, so I ran off to class. That afternoon, I heard the school speaker announce that everything written on the flyers was lies, and Charity would be in detention. Once the last bell rang, I just wanted to get home and hide away from the world. But as I walked outside, I saw my dad waiting for me at the gate. I had nothing to say to him, so I ignored him and walked off. Please, Teresa, at least hear me out. I stopped on the spot, then walked over to him. I guess it was time I found out the truth. So, turns out, yes, I'm not his daughter. But I wasn't Uncle Alfred's daughter either. I found this, and it made me feel so guilty, he said. He showed me an artificial insemination certificate file. Turns out after years of trying, my parents went to run some tests, and my dad was diagnosed as infertile. Mom didn't want him to be upset, so she secretly got artificial insemination and gave birth to me. It was never your mom's fault, and I was wrong to treat you like that. I'm so sorry. A fresh ran of tears streamed down my face with each word I heard from him. Teresa, I'm so sorry that us adults, selfishness and bitterness has hurt you. Startled, I turned around to find that Uncle Alfred was already there behind me. I guess he'd come to pick me up, and I didn't notice since I was talking to my dad. He must have heard the whole story. Alfred and I will do anything to make it up to you. Even if you want to find your biological dad, we'll try our best. I looked at him and Uncle Alfred, thinking, there's no need to, as I've already got two amazing dads.
I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. My God, I was so nervous. You see, this was my first day as an intern in this super big company. On one hand, anxiety wouldn't stop creeping up on me. But on the other hand, I actually couldn't wait to begin working in this fancy professional office. Having my own desk, my own PC, doing all the paperwork. So exciting! But, well, it didn't exactly turn out as I expected. All I did on my first day was make a lot of coffees, get everyone's lunch, and do endless printing. Oh, I forgot to introduce you to my team. This over here is Quinn, our team leader. And then the girl over there is Sadie. That guy sitting in the corner is Bob. And I'm the adorable Lauren.
Then, while I was bringing yet another coffee and cake to each one of them to get to know them better, the manager, Caleb, came to our department and began yelling at Quinn.
Why have I still not received the report on the working project?
Sorry, boss. We're kinda short-handed.
Short-handed, huh? Then how come every time I walk past, I see the intern doing meaningless things? I didn't hire her to wait on you guys. Is that clear?
Then Caleb looked at me and said,
You, intern, in my office.
I followed Caleb into his office, feeling all anxious. Did I do something wrong? Then suddenly, Caleb hugged me from behind. I got so startled that I immediately pushed him away. What are you doing? You can't do that here.
Sorry. Just seeing you here makes me so happy. But what's with the tense face?
Oh, I never saw you yelling at somebody, so it was kinda scary.
That? Oh, that's nothing.
You're probably wondering why my manager was hugging me. Well, actually, Caleb is my boyfriend. You see, I was in my last semester of college. I told him that I wanted to do an internship because it would be good for me, so he insisted that I do it in his company. At first, I didn't think it was a good idea. I mean, couples that work together don't stay together, right? But he managed to convince me otherwise, so here I am. Even so, I didn't want anyone in the office to know about our relationship. Therefore, I didn't let him drive me to work, and having lunch together is also a no-no. Caleb had no comment about this. He probably understood why this was necessary. But then one day, at the end of the meeting with our department, Caleb was about to walk out of the meeting room when he suddenly stopped, turned around, and said in front of all,
Oh, by the way, I just want you all to know that Lauren is my girlfriend. Okay, bye.
Oh my God! Why on earth did he do that? Everybody immediately turned and stared at me with shocked expressions. And me, well, I just wanted to slide down the chair and hide under the table. I stormed into Caleb's office and demanded an explanation.
Yesterday I had lunch with a manager of another department, and he said that he liked you and wanted to ask you out. So I thought it's best to inform everyone that you're my girlfriend. Am I right?
What? Ugh, no! Men and their dumb egos! Ugh! Anyway, I hoped that it wouldn't affect anything. But as I feared, it did. Massively so. The moment everyone found out I was Caleb's girlfriend, they started treating me differently. Every time I walked into the room, they immediately stopped talking and gave me awkward looks. Or after work, they would go out for some drinks but purposely not invite me. It sucked being left out like that. And then one day, it got much worse. I arrived at the office extra early as there was an email I needed to send out before 9. But my PC wouldn't turn on, so I got under the table trying to see if a cable was loose. Right at that moment, Bob and Sadie walked into the office gossiping.
Clearly Lauren only got that internship because she's Caleb's girlfriend. And did you see her clothes? All those expensive brands? Well, having a boyfriend who's the manager in a big company must be blissful.
What? I never accept expensive gifts from Caleb. They're all mine. Then during work, I accidentally took a glimpse at Quinn's computer screen and saw that they were chatting about me in a group chat. Something about me not having to do errands just because my boyfriend's the manager. Hearing and reading all these mean comments made me feel really frustrated, so I wasn't in any mood to work that whole morning. Then in the afternoon, we had a meeting about the project we were all working on, and Caleb asked me to hand him the report. Oh snap. I'd totally forgotten to do it. Sorry. I haven't written the report yet.
Can I ask why? And what were you doing this entire morning? For the sake of our team, please focus. We can't mess this project up.
I'm just having a lot going on, okay? Interns are humans too. Jeez, I'll send you the report by the end of the day, boss. Everybody gave me befuddled looks. Caleb most of all. But wait, I see some of them smiling. Were those smiles for me? Then after the meeting, everyone gathered around me, patted my shoulder, and praised me for standing up against Caleb. To be honest, It felt good to be noticed and not ridiculed. So maybe there was still a chance I could win them over, right? The next day at noon, Caleb came by the department to grab some lunch with me. But I told him, in front of everyone, that I wanted to have lunch with the team. He looked confused, but still had to agree. Lunch with the whole team was great, except for one thing. They constantly kept asking me about Caleb. Like, what's he like outside the office? Why is he always so strict and grumpy? I noticed that they kind of liked talking about Caleb, so I told them, oh, Caleb is such a great boyfriend. He's very attentive and is an amazing cook. But they weren't interested in that. Oh no, they just cared about his bad habits. Ugh, fine. So I gave them what they wanted. Well, I don't like that he's always perfectly on time. I'm 1 minute late, and he begins to lecture me about how time is precious and we shouldn't waste it. That definitely caught everyone's attention right away. They really liked that, huh? I felt kind of guilty, but I couldn't deny how nice it was. That feeling when everyone was starting to like me, and it would be only this time, right? Well, how wrong I was, because every time our team went out, they started gossiping about Caleb and then looked longingly at me until I badmouthed my boyfriend. Again. But to me, Caleb is the perfect man. He just has a few tiny flaws, but nothing major. So I decided to make stuff up. He sleep talks and never brushes his teeth before bed. And he burps a lot at home. Ugh, I hated it. But what can I do? The worse stuff I told them about Caleb, the more they seemed to like me. Then one day, Caleb invited some of the other managers to his apartment for some beer. Suddenly, a guy pointed at Caleb's beer and asked him if he should be drinking that, what with his gas problem. Oh no. Then this guy told a confusing-looking Caleb that everyone in the office was gossiping about him. Luckily for me, he just shrugged and said he didn't want to hear about idle gossip. Phew, that was close. But then something terrible happened. Some of my fake rumors reached Mr. Smith's ears, the general manager. One day I walked past Caleb's office and heard Mr. Smith yelling at him. Something about Caleb resigning as manager because there was a rumor that he pushed other staff who dared to argue with him to quit. Oh no! I only made that up on purpose so the others would be afraid of him and stop talking about him. It's all my fault. So as soon as Mr. Smith walked out of Caleb's room, I ran after him and said, "Please wait. I can explain." "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath to calm down. Then I began to explain to him that I was the one who spread that rumor, and that it was 100% not true. Please don't force him to resign. It's all my fault.
Oh, sweetie, why did you do that?
I'm sorry, Dad. I was stupid and acted like a child.
It's okay, but gotta say, I'm disappointed, Lauren. I will talk to Caleb later. Hope you've learned your lesson this time, and don't you ever do that again. Understood?
Yes, Dad. Then he walked away. I let out a sigh of relief when, suddenly...
Dad? Are you calling Mr. Smith Dad?
Oh no! I didn't notice that Caleb was standing behind us. Well, the truth was finally out. As you can see, Mr. Smith, the general manager of the company, is my dad. But nobody, not even Caleb, knew that. Then Caleb continued.
Why didn't you tell me that Mr. Smith is your father? And why did you spread that awful rumor about me, Lauren? Why did you do that to me? Do I look like a fool to you?
He got so mad that he was about to walk off. I quickly held his hand and began to explain. I didn't tell you Mr. Smith's my dad because I was afraid you'd feel pressured and wouldn't want to be with me anymore. Caleb didn't say anything. He just stood there silent. So I continued. About the rumor, I'm so sorry. I messed up, but please, you need to understand. From the moment everyone knew I was your girlfriend, they started gossiping about me and leaving me out. I felt so hurt and lonely when all I wanted to do was fit in. Until this one time, everyone talked to me again as I unintentionally complained about you, and they treated me like a friend after that. but they're always hungry for more gossip about you. So I had to make some up, and I eventually lost control. I'm so sorry, Caleb. Caleb let out a sigh, then hugged me.
I'm sorry that happened to you in the office. I didn't know you were struggling. Next time, you have to tell me. Don't hide things like that, okay?
I nodded with a smile and silently thanked my generous boyfriend. Yet I almost ruined his career just to please those talkative coworkers of mine. But fortunately, things turned out well between us in the end. Eventually, people found out that Mr. Smith was my father, 'cause, well, eyes and ears were everywhere in this company. You can't hide anything. Then they began to gossip that Caleb was only dating me because of the managing position. Man, they'll never stop, will they? But anyway, I don't care anymore. My internship soon ended, and I decided not to come back to this company, obviously. I will find a more suitable environment. But actually, the time as an intern there taught me an important lesson. That you shouldn't care what other people think of you, and just stay out of all that office drama. It's really exhausting.
Ugh, we couldn't make a tiny single profit this month. Again? Business is so slow these days. Oh no, it's already past 5? Gotta go pick up Lucy. I rushed over to Elena's house. She's my best friend. She often helps take care of my daughter Lucy so I can work extra hours. No matter how tough things were going for me, at least I still have Lucy. Even on the worst days, one look at her angelic smile, and I realize things aren't so bad after all. Why the long face? Has this month been as hard as last month? I nodded, sadly, and entered the house. It's been even worse. I just want to earn enough money to provide a nice life for Lucy, but I'm barely breaking even. I looked over at Lucy, who was playing with her dollies on the living room floor. I plopped down on the sofa while Elena brought me a cup of tea. Things will get better. I just know it. How about I read your tarot cards to see if things will improve for you? Yeah, right. Let's just assume those fortune-telling things are right. I'm not into the spiritual stuff, but Elena swears by it. I suppose it can't hurt to hear what she has to say, right? She made me shuffle the cards, then laid some out on the coffee table in front of me. Oh, that's interesting. Hey, Nora, seems like your life's going to change sooner than you think. Destiny is telling me that it'll be tomorrow after work at the bakery close to your shop. It looks like you'll meet a man, a rich one. I stared down at the cards. How on earth was she getting all this information from them? Yeah, whatever. Thanks for looking after Lucy, but I better take her home and make her dinner. Who would believe those fortune-telling tricks? But, come to think of it, I'm also desperate. With all the lockdowns and Brexit, my little candle shop in the south of England wasn't going so well of late. No amount of 2-for-1 offers or sales events were helping. I'm down to single digits on the money my parents lent me to open up the shop. Then there's Lucy to think of. In her 3 years of life, she has already been through so much, including her father abandoning us both. I want to provide an amazing life for her, not cause us both to end up homeless. I may as well do as Elena said. I mean, it's not like I had anything to lose. So the next day, I closed up the shop early, then with Lucy in tow, walked toward the bakery. There didn't seem to be anyone about. Looks like Elena was so wrong. Oh, miss, I'm so sorry. I brushed bits of pastry off me and glared at this man. Okay, so it looked like he's only a few years older than me, but why is he wearing such old-fashioned clothes? And what's with his awful hairstyle? This has to be the man Elena was talking about, right? But he's so not my type. But I suppose if dating him changes everything, then... Oh, cute kid. He pointed at Lucy, who was cuddling her favorite doll. Yeah, this is my daughter Lucy. Sometimes I swear she loves that doll more than me. She won't let it out of her sight. He chuckled, then nervously scratched his head and said, You're a good mother, I can tell. Are you going this way? He pointed up the street. I nodded, then started walking alongside him. Okay, so he's called Dylan. He's an engineer and he's just moved here for work. We exchanged numbers and you know what? We've been texting quite a lot. Soon we started hanging out and he's not so bad, albeit a little on the boring side. Lucy seems to adore him, though. He pulls silly faces to make her laugh and buys her sweets. He even took us both to the zoo. OMG, it was so good. And Lucy loved seeing the penguins. So when he told me he liked me and asked me out on a date, I said yes. Okay, so he's not my usual type, but he's rich, caring, and good with Lucy. Besides, it's all too much to be a coincidence, right? Elena's tarot reading must have come true, and he's the guy who's going to change my luck. Hey, all the romantic dates out to the restaurants and places were kind of fun. And even better, business was improving. This was great and all, but dating Dylan was getting kind of tiring. I like the guy. He's sweet and kind, but I don't have feelings for him. One time after a delicious meal, he walked me home. Then, on my doorstep, he gushed out about how much he liked me, then leaned in for a kiss. Panicked, I darted out of the way, causing him to trip over and almost fall into a bush. Another time, he took my hand when we were walking through the park. I then just stood there while he gave me this soppy look and said, "Nora, I really like you, and I know you like me too because you're not letting go of my hand." It made me feel so awkward, so I just pretended I had something in my eye, then changed the subject. Good luck charm or not, I couldn't carry on like this anymore. So when Dylan surprised me at my shop with a bouquet of flowers which caused a bunch of wasps to swarm around me, I screamed at him, "Please? I'm trying to work. Will you just leave me alone?" Dylan looked hurt, then he left. I felt really bad about it, but I just felt so suffocated by him. After that, Dylan and I stopped seeing each other, but as expected, my business started to go downhill again. Ugh, why? Why does it have to be him that makes everything work? But if it's really only Dylan who can help me make money, then maybe, then I'd continue dating him until the end of this winter. I mean, I did need money to provide for Lucy. As a peace offering, I decided to buy Dylan his favorite pastry from the bakery and surprise him with it. But as I was walking out of the bakery, I walked straight into someone. Dylan? Turns out he was also planning on surprising me, and he was just getting a pastry for Dutch courage. I invited him into my shop, and he handed me this gross gemstone bracelet. But I forced a smile, told him it was beautiful, and hugged him. Looks like we're back on. That night, I went home and placed the bracelet on the side. But then Lucy got a hold of it, and I noticed one of the gemstones on it was missing. So terrified she'd swallowed it, I spent all evening in A&E. Turns out it was a false alarm. Nice gift, Dylan. For the sake of my business, I may have had to date Dylan, but that didn't mean I couldn't see other guys too. So I joined this dating app and started talking to this cute guy called Austin. We gelled so well. So when he asked me out, I said yes. It was a harmless meetup. This wasn't cheating, right? Austin showed up and, I didn't want to compare, but Dylan was like a desert, while Austin was definitely the green oasis. But right when Austin and I stepped out of the cafe, we ran into Dylan on the sidewalk with another girl. So turns out we both wanted to find someone new? If so, maybe there was no need to wait until winter. So Dylan insisted on coming round, and naturally he wanted to know who Austin was. I mentioned how we were both seeing other people, so it was fine. But turns out the girl I saw with him was just a friend. It was time I was honest with him. So I told him how he was a good luck charm for my business, and that's why I continued to date him. He clutched his chest and gave me this heartbroken look. Then he just nodded and left. I felt really bad about it, but at least it was over now, right? I went back to raising Lucy the best I could, trying to salvage my failing business and dating Austin, but in the end it didn't work out with him. The weird thing is I found myself thinking about Dylan all the time. Just the cheesy things he said and his quirky ways. I couldn't help but think that if he was here now, life would be so much better. OMG, the realization hit me. I actually have feelings for Dylan. I tried texting and calling him, but he didn't answer. I suppose I couldn't blame him. So I went round to Elena's and confided in her. That's when she took my hands in hers and told me the shocking truth. Dylan is actually my cousin. He really has just moved to this town, and he is an engineer. But I made the fortunate thing up. Actually, Dylan once saw you come over to pick up Lucy and liked you. So I decided to do some matchmaking. What? So all this time, it had all been a lie? My business didn't improve because of Dylan. It had just been a fluke? I was kind of mad with Elena, but I asked her for a favor. I'm so nervous. I got Elena to set this meeting up with Dylan. He thinks he's meeting her, not me. Oh, there he is.
Oh, it's you.
Dylan, I know I was horrible to you, and I'm sorry. Elena told me everything, and I don't care if my business could be better or worse, even though we both tricked each other. I know that I like you, and I just want you by my side." He gave me this questioning look. Then, seeing that I was being serious, he hugged me. "So what now?" "Well, Dylan and I are back together. He's so great with Lucy, and guess what? My business is magically doing amazing again." Turns out it has nothing to do with magic or good luck charms or anything to do with Dylan, who not only recommended my little candle shop to all of his friends and clients, but also started up an awesome online marketing campaign for me. Sometimes happiness is right under our noses, but we still try to find it somewhere else. So my advice to you is to learn how to be happy with the things you already have, as, trust me, it's only when you lose them that you realize how amazing they were in the first place. I was so nervous. Like, the most nervous I'd ever been in my life. I didn't even know it was possible for a press conference to get so crowded. Suddenly, the flashes came at me from every direction. It was almost blinding, but the clicking didn't stop, as well as the sound of them calling my name. "Hazel, look here! Here, over here, Hazel!" Oh my gosh, why was this so chaotic? I started to panic, so I ran away, but I'd only taken a few steps before thump! Oh, these stupid high heels. "Oh, hi, I didn't see you there." Well, let's be real, it's kind of hard to see anyone from this angle. Then from every direction, the reporters swarmed in like starving vultures, trying to take pictures of me. I was still confused and didn't know what to do when, "Gentlemen, please give her some space. Are you okay?" Robert, my adoptive dad, came to help me up. Excuse us, this is her first time attending such a crowded event. If it's all right with you, we'll help her answer your questions." Phew, I'd finally escaped the chaos. Or so I thought. As soon as he got into the house, Robert shouted, "Pamela!" which gave me the fright of my life. "Didn't I tell you to teach Hazel some manners? How could you let her embarrass herself in front of the public like that?" Pamela looked mortified and kept bowing down and apologizing, but Robert was still furious. "If this happens again, you better pack your bags and get out of here." I felt so guilty. It was all because of me that she had been shouted at like that. But I'd done my best. Clearly it wasn't good enough, though. I tried to forget about it, but early the next morning, Pamela woke me up. She gave me a timetable and told me that from now on, I wouldn't need to go to school anymore, and that a tutor would come to teach me at home instead. What? Why all of a sudden? I asked Pamela in shock. It was because of yesterday's incident. The mayor has decided that you need to spend more time learning the necessary etiquette. Are you serious? He can't just keep me locked up here. No way. Hazel? Listen, you should be grateful that you got adopted into this house. Keep in mind of everything Mr. Cornelius has done for you and obediently do as I say. Do you understand what I mean? Looking into Pamela's eyes, I knew I had no choice but to agree. The day of the opening ceremony for the town hall had finally arrived, and I got to leave the house for the first time in a month. A whole month. Now was the moment of truth. In the eyes of the public, I had completely transformed into a proper, prestigious lady. When Robert started speaking at the ceremony, he announced a charity fundraiser for my orphanage, in the hopes that children like me would be given a chance to live a better life. Hearing this speech, I could barely hold back my tears. I was sitting next to my adoptive mom, Eleanor, so I turned to give her a big hug. Suddenly, all eyes were on me, and it seemed I'd finally done something right. I smiled up at Robert, and we both had tears in our eyes. Maybe Pamela was right. I really was lucky to have been adopted by such kind people. But as soon as we got home, things changed. My parents got all quiet and went off to their room, leaving me alone. Where was my praise? I'd done so well, hadn't I? Why weren't they happy? The following days, they still asked me to join them for their events, so I guess I must have done a good job. And while the media and public were around, they were all touchy-feely and affectionate towards me, constantly praising me. We must have looked like the perfect family. But the minute we got home, they'd ignore me, and if they wanted to tell me something, they'd get Pamela to speak to me. It was so flipping weird. I actually started to feel quite lonely and depressed. And even though I was living in the lap of luxury, I missed the orphanage. One day, Pamela's daughter, aka the only friend I had in this enormous mansion, Paisley saw how upset I was and asked, "Hey, so why do you agree to move into this house? You're clearly unhappy here." Paisley got me. She was the same age as me, so we were on the same wavelength. I was nervous to tell her how I felt, but I knew she would understand, so I told her everything. The thing is, I actually have a sister. She's only 8, and she's called Amber. That's why I was missing the orphanage. She was still there. She's got congenital heart disease, so after our parents passed away, the orphanage couldn't afford her hospital bills. When the mayor's family decided to adopt me, I refused because I didn't want to leave Amber alone. But then Robert offered to pay for her medical treatments if I agreed, and well, the rest is history. You see, I can't just leave. If I did, what would happen to Amber? Oh, Hazel, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. But I need to be honest with you. One time I overheard Robert and Eleanor saying that you were the perfect girl to play this role. Huh? What role? That meant, were they using me for something? It didn't make any sense, but those words kept lingering on my mind until... One time, Eleanor asked me to join her at a charity event, which she said was going to be broadcast on TV. Our job was to prepare homemade food and give it out to the homeless. I was so excited, but when I walked into our kitchen, I discovered the chefs had already cooked everything before the filming crew arrived. I was so disappointed and asked Eleanor about it. She just laughed and said, "Oh, no, sweetie, our job is just to look pretty and graceful in front of the camera." Then before distributing the food, she gave me a pair of gloves and said, "Don't touch any of their hands, okay? They are filthy." Oh my gosh, how could she say such things? Oh, then it hit me. I understood what Paisley had said now. The affection and kindness that the Corneliuses were showing me was actually just for show. All to win over the audience, aka the public, while this was their very true face. I had to do something about this. I couldn't let them keep on deceiving the public like this. So when Eleanor went to the bathroom and took off her gloves, I quickly grabbed them and threw them in the trash. When we went back out, a homeless man approached her to express his gratitude and asked for a handshake. Of course, she tried to refuse, but at that moment the camera turned to her, so she had no choice but to give in. And you know what? The man didn't just shake her hand. He even pulled Eleanor in for a big hug. I couldn't hold back my laughter at how flustered she looked. Served her right. Afterward, Eleanor grabbed my arm and dragged me to a quiet corner. Then she said, "It was you who did this, wasn't it?" I pretended to have no idea what she was talking about, and this just infuriated her even more. Then later that evening when we got home, Robert was already waiting and shouted at me, "What do you think you're playing at?" I was confused, but then Eleanor added, "Don't you ever mess with me like that again."
Now listen closely. Don't you miss your little sis? Aren't you curious if she's doing okay or not? That's right. You better have behaved yourself from now on, young lady.
I was so shaken by what they'd said. I didn't even want to leave my room. What if something happened to my sister? Then suddenly, Paisley climbed through my window into my room. As soon as I saw her, I burst into tears. "Paisley, please help me with this. I need you to go to my orphanage and check on Amber and see if she's okay." A few hours later, Paisley came back panting. "Your sister? She's not doing good." "What? But hadn't she been receiving money for her monthly treatments?" Paisley shook her head. "The nuns there said they hadn't received a penny since you left. Now Amber is barely surviving." Paisley's words broke my heart. Those two had been fooling me all this time, and now my sister's life was hanging on by a thread. I had to get to the bottom of this. I walked past Robert's office, and that's when I overheard someone talking. Curious, I peeked in and saw a group of middle-aged men sitting around a table. One of them spoke up.
"Hey, Robert, the election day is coming. Is that little girl still doing a decent job?" "Oh, don't worry about her. She's just a silly little kid. She believes anything I tell her, especially about her sick sister," Robert smirked. How dare he speak about my sister like that? I had to do something. I couldn't let this vicious man keep on fooling everyone like he'd done to me. So I took out my phone and started filming. "Speaking of which, how much charity money have we got so far?" $100,000, Robert said. And the room was filled with praise. Gentlemen, by the time of the closing party for the charity this weekend, we should have almost $500,000 for the election campaign. As soon as I win, your business will continue to be tax reduced for the next 4 years. I had to cover my mouth to stop myself from gasping. So this whole time, he'd been exploiting me and the orphanage for his corruption? Gosh, I was such an idiot to fall right into his trap. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Who's there?
Robert shouted and rushed to the door. Oh no! Panicked, I ran, but not far enough before I tripped and the phone flew out of my hand. Robert and his men caught up with me, picked up my phone, and deleted all my evidence. They even took the phone away from me. He turned to me and said, "I've already warned you, have I not?" "You're a liar," I yelled. "You haven't paid a penny to my sister." Robert growled. "Who told you that?" But all he had for an answer was my silence and fuming look. Furious, he dragged me back to my room. "Maid, bring me the keys to her room." And then he locked me up inside until the day of the closing party of the charity rolled around, where they'd be announcing the amount of money they'd collected. That day, all the staff were out of the mansion. Suddenly, I heard the door being unlocked. Panicked, I hid behind the closet. "Hazel, where are you?" Oh, it was just Paisley. She found a way to sneak me out of the mansion and told me to run straight back to the orphanage. But no, first I had to expose that sly old fox Robert. Luckily, when I got to the event, Robert was giving his speech. I immediately ran up to the stage, snatched the mic, and told everyone about his evil plan. But I was no match for him. Before I could finish, security was dragging me off the stage, and Robert had already taken control of the situation.
"Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry for my daughter's behavior. The reason why we decided to adopt her was that she's mentally ill. Since she came to our home, she has become better, but as you can see, there's been a bit of a relapse." What a snake! This jerk would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Just then, the big screen on stage suddenly showed the video I'd taken, revealing all the schemes of Robert and his accomplices. Now he was well and truly exposed. I watched as he stammered. No, this can't be happening." Right at that moment, the police rushed in to arrest Robert and his accomplices in the stands. You might be wondering how we pulled that off. Well, as I was running through the hallway, I managed to send the video to Paisley. As soon as she received it, she came to find me and saw everything that had happened. So she secretly ran to her mom for help. Pamela then made a plan. While Paisley freed me from the mansion, Pamela set to work on projecting the video on the big screen. Genius, right? A month later, Robert and his accomplices were arrested for embezzlement. And, of course, he got locked up for a long, long time. Both him and Eleanor received such massive backlash from the public, to the point that she had to stay hidden away too. The charity money, luckily, was brought back to the orphanage, and part of it was used to take care of my sister Amber. She's doing much better now. Oh, and Paisley and I are still best of friends. Pamela has found a way better job. And as for me, I went back to stay at the orphanage until I'm old enough to move out. I'm better off being on my own with my sister than being adopted by some mess. Admit it. Come on. You took my necklace, didn't you? Mindy looked at us and shook her head. She was sweating. Well, there are only 3 of us in this house, and if Andy didn't take it, then obviously it was you. Seriously, Cass, you got to believe me, I didn't take it. But clearly she was lying, because when I rummaged through her bag, Cass's necklace was right there. Cass told her to get out of her house, and Mindy burst into tears. Poor Mindy. I really wanted to stop Cass, but she seriously hates people touching her stuff, so I just kept quiet. You see, Cass and I are pretty much joint at the hip. We've always lived in the same neighborhood, so we grew up together and shared everything. Well, almost everything. Except one little secret that would probably ruin our friendship forever if she found out about it. Auntie, what are you doing? I started to stammer. This is so cute. Honestly, I'm so upset about Mindy. I can't believe she'd do something like that. I smiled, not knowing what to say. I mean, it was me who'd exposed her. Suddenly, I felt so guilty. Right at that moment, we got to the checkout. Cass took everything out of the cart to give to the cashier. Hang on, she exclaimed. What is this?
This item has the barcode ripped off. The cashier made a fuss for a while and even called the manager. Cass and I stood there for ages trying to figure out what was going on. Cass even started crying, thinking she'd be accused of shoplifting. After about 30 minutes, the store manager came and told us we could leave. They kept the items that had no barcodes and sent us on our way. Phew, that was close. What? What do you mean? Oh, nothing. I'm just relieved that we didn't get into any trouble. Just so you know, though, that wasn't the first time we'd got ourselves into an awkward situation while out shopping. Sometimes it was the torn barcodes, sometimes the tags were missing, then the security alarm would always go off at the door. And all of these situations weren't just coincidences. Okay, I gotta be honest here. The thing is, I have a habit of pilfering. Not because I can't afford stuff. I mean, my dad's the owner of a bank, so money isn't the issue. My dad basically buys me the latest phone every month. And you should see my wardrobe. I have all the designer bags. I steal because it gives me the kind of thrill that my boring daily life just can't give me. My dad just hands me money every day and never stops to think that maybe I'd like a hug or a how are you. Ever since my mom left when I was just a baby, he's been using money as a way to keep the peace. So one day when I was in elementary school, I stole a hairpin from the girl who sat next to me. It felt so good, like my own little secret. I loved the drama that came with it, and the fact that no one ever suspected me because I was such a rich little girl. After the hairpin, I got addicted to stealing little things and couldn't stop. It felt like the only thing I could control in my life, and so I kept on doing it. And here I am now, still getting a buzz from it every single time. And yep, you've guessed it. The one who took the necklace at Cass's sleepover was none other than me, of course. But at that time, because I was so scared, I slipped the necklace into Mindy's bag and pretended to find it there. I was deep in thought when suddenly Alex's scream startled me. Guys, I've lost my unicorn pen. You know the pen that glows? The whole class was suddenly in uproar. Some friends were trying to look for it. Meanwhile, Alex was walking straight towards me. Andrea must have taken it. This morning when I took out the pen, me and her were the only ones in here. I looked up at Alex, my heart pounding in my chest. This is it. I'm so done this time. Then I suddenly looked over at Scott Parker, the cute boy who just transferred to our class. Oh no, I couldn't give him a bad impression of me. I had to quickly think of a way out of this. You waited until I went to the bathroom to take it, didn't you? Alex, I'd never do such a thing. Besides, I have loads of nice pens. In fact, you can have one if you'd like. I pulled out a beautiful pink rhinestone pen from my pencil case and handed it to Alex. While Alex stared in awe at my pen, I suggested everyone go check their lockers to see if her pen was there. Sure enough, right by the lockers was the glowing unicorn pen she'd lost, right in front of Scott. I picked up the pen and handed it to Alex. I'm so upset you thought I'd steal this from you, but it's okay. At least we found it. Alex blushed and apologized to me. Our other friends also blamed Alex for not looking for it carefully enough and for jumping to conclusions about me. Next time, don't be so silly. Andrea's a good person. Besides, her family is so wealthy. Why would she need to steal a pen from you? I just smiled and walked away. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind me. It was Scott. He looked at me and said, Wow, that was totally dramatic. I'm Scott, by the way. You're Andrea, right? I'm sorry if this is a bit forward, but here's my number. Excuse me? Am I dreaming? Of course, I texted him as soon as I got home. He said he was so impressed with how I'd handled being blamed for the whole thing. Soon we were chatting every day, and eventually he asked me to be his girlfriend. I was so happy. But there was just one small problem. Ever since we'd started dating, I felt really ashamed about my bad habit of stealing things. I was determined to give it up, but it wasn't going to be easy. One day, Scott came to pick me up and asked if I wanted to go to the bookstore. A bookstore? No, I don't want to go there. Can we go somewhere else? Please? Seeing me panic like that, Scott looked puzzled. Then he suggested we go to his place to watch a movie, which I was fine with. Hopefully there would be no temptations for stealing there. A middle-aged woman opened the door for us at Scott's place. Oh, this is Sandra, our maid. Hi, Sandra. I'm Andrea. But instead of saying hi back, Sandra just stared at me in a seriously creepy way. It actually sent shivers down my spine. After watching the movie, Scott and his mom invited me to stay for dinner. Scott's mother, Mrs. Doris Parker, was really sweet, and we had some interesting chats. While waiting for dessert, I got up to go to the bathroom. But as I stepped out there, I almost bumped into Sandra. She was just standing there staring at me again. Sorry. She didn't say anything, but just kept staring at me in this weird way. Oh my gosh, why was she looking at me like that? The next morning at school, Scott told me his mother had just lost a valuable ring. She had a jewelry tray next to the bathroom sink, and after washing her hands, she'd forgotten to put her ring on. After dinner, the ring was no longer there. I comforted Scott, then made an excuse to go to the ladies' room. I needed to seriously think about this. Honestly, I'd tried my best to not get the urge to steal at Scott's place. But when I'd seen Doris's beautiful ring, no, I had to find a way to return it. No one could find out about this. And I had sworn to myself that I would never let this happen again. Hello, Huh? Where's Sandra? Oh, she was fired. Mrs. Parker said Sandra had stolen her jewelry. Anyway, may I help you? Oh, no. I had to return this ring immediately. Poor Sandra. Scott came down for me and said he'd make dinner. I glanced through the window to find Doris was having tea in the garden. This was my chance. I snuck up to her room, quietly tiptoed in, and headed towards her jewelry box. Suddenly, the light came on. Tell me, what on earth are you doing here? I quickly turned around, dropping the ring to the floor. Mindy? Why are you here? I'm Scott's cousin. So it was you who stole the ring. I can't believe my cousin is dating you. Hearing the noise, Scott and his mom ran upstairs while I was still dumbfounded and speechless. It was you who stole Cass's necklace too, wasn't it? She won't even speak to me because of you. I'm so sorry. I know it's not okay, but I couldn't stop myself. I've been feeling so guilty, so that's why I'm returning it. I was still kneeling on the ground when a hand reached out to me and helped me stand up. I'll handle this. Come on, let's have a chat outside, shall we? Turns out Mrs. Parker is a therapist. She could see I had a problem and offered to help me. I told her how guilty I'd been feeling about Sandra getting fired and asked Doris if she could call her for me so I could apologize. 30 minutes later, Sandra arrived. As soon as Doris saw her, she apologized and offered her the job back. But no, ma'am. I was the one who stole it, and I deserve to be punished. I'm sorry, Sandra, I've already confessed to Mrs. Parker that I stole the ring. I didn't mean to get you fired. I just couldn't help it. You didn't do anything wrong. It was me? I was greedy? She is innocent. What on earth is going on? Obviously, I was the thief, so why was she defending me? Why are you doing this? Do we know each other, Sandra? And that's when the truth came pouring out. Sandra was my mom. Yeah, I don't know how this is possible either. So according to her words, she'd had a huge fight with my dad when I was a baby, and she'd fled to another city where she found a job working for Scott's family. When they moved to Seattle, she came with them. Even though she was nervous about returning back to where me and my dad were, she'd carried so much guilt about leaving us, and never in a million years did she expect to bump into me at Scott's house. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. I'd imagined this moment my whole life, and now, here I was, standing face to face with her, and she'd even taken the blame for me. I couldn't believe it. Mom, I'm so sorry that I stole the ring. I can't believe you're really here. Sweetie, you don't need to apologize. I'm the one who will be apologizing for the rest of my life. Abandoning my daughter like that. What kind of mom am I? How will you ever forgive me? We stood there, hugging for what felt like forever, and I knew in that moment that I'd never steal again. Doris diagnosed me as having kleptomania due to a lack of love from my mom. But now that my mom was back, I had no reason to seek out those thrills from stealing. I had everything I needed right here. There were a few moments where I almost stole again, but Doris told me to call my mom as soon as I felt the urge, and when my mom picked up the phone and I heard her voice, the urge faded, and I felt so much better. Scott and Cass and Mindy forgave me after Doris sat them all down and explained more about my addiction and where it stemmed from. Now, Scott and I are still together, and I see my mom every day at Scott's place. My dad hasn't forgiven my mom for leaving yet, but baby steps. Finally, I feel like everything is complete, and my pilfering is a thing of the past.
Yes, it's me, Kate, here again. When I traded places with my doppelganger to avoid being stuck in some ghastly summer school, I didn't expect to end up penniless and having to work in some dusty old homestay. But I suppose it wasn't all bad, as I got to meet Bond. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that not only was he a runaway rich kid like me, but I also caught him hanging out with moi. Well, the other me. Ugh! I hired her to pretend to be me, not to be with my man. Looks like it was time to return to my normal life.
Miss, without a letter of invitation, I can't let you in.
Are you kidding me? Why do I need an invitation to enter my own home? How could they not recognize me? Right at that moment, Clara gracefully got out of a luxury car and entered my house. I shouted over to her, but on seeing me, she gave me a confused look. Then she whispered something to the security guard and went straight inside.
Sorry, Miss Kate doesn't know you. Please leave.
Huh? How dare she? She wasn't Miss Kate. I was. Did she really think she could treat me like this? Ugh! I'd show her who the real rich girl was. But as I was leaving, I caught a glimpse of myself in a car window. Oh my gosh, I looked horrendous. My once bouncy curls, perfectly made-up face, and glamorous clothing were no more. Instead, I had a greasy ponytail, my skin was completely bare, and I was in worn old clothes. No wonder the security guards didn't recognize me. I barely recognized my own self. Well, well, well. How comfortable it is to be back in my room, doll up again, and just take back what's mine. How did you get in here? This is my room, remember? I can run away by myself, so you bet I can sneak back into my own room. Listen here, fake me. Mission's over. It's time you left. What mission? Are you crazy? Get your filthy hands off my stuff! Wow, immerse yourself in the role much, huh? Enough. Now give me my life back. What if I don't? Don't you dare! You think my parents won't recognize me? Seeing as I've been impersonating you for an entire month without question, I doubt it. Besides, they're on a month-long business trip in Dubai. So, who will help you now, huh? OMG, she was so arrogant, unruly, and obnoxious. Worst of all, she reminded me of someone. Me! Well, the old me. Why didn't I realize before how awful I actually was? Ignoring Clara's defiant face, I took out my phone and made a FaceTime call to my parents. They had to spot it was me straight away, right? Wrong. They gave us both looks of shocked confusion, and they couldn't seem to tell us apart. So they told the two of us to stay at home for the time being while they made arrangements to come back. Huh, is it that hard to distinguish your own daughter from a hick? But anyway, she'll be out of here soon enough. The next morning, we went back to school. Claire looked so trashy in her tiny miniskirt. Jeez, this wasn't a nightclub. Oh, Kate, you look outstanding. Where did you buy it from? That's it. My friends will always be able to tell me apart from a fraud. But hang on. No! They were moving toward Clara. Huh? Are they actually praising her?
Wow, there's another Kate here, but it's a faulty version. A lame one.
My panicked feeling increased as all my friends and Clara burst out laughing. You guys don't recognize me? I'm the real Kate, the one you all idolize, the trendsetter around here. Everyone looked at me in bewilderment, and then back to Clara. Look at her pathetic appearance. She's just trying to be a copy of me. After that, Clara and her friends left. Jeez, all it took was one summer away for Clara to turn into me. Ugh, why doesn't anyone recognize me? Seeing Clara living my life with my friends was driving me crazy. I was now seen as the copycat version of my own self. Ugh, No way was I losing to this crafty charlatan. So the next day, I decided to show everyone how charismatic I was. After all, form is temporary, but class is permanent. And soon, everyone would realize who the real Kate was. Right? I waited until Clara was out of the way. Then I went over to my group and started recalling some of our old stories that only the real me could possibly know. When Clara returned, oh my, she looked furious. Ha! One day, when I just entered the cafeteria, I saw my group making a nerdy girl run errands for them. Poof, your mother is the school's measly janitor, so you two are just our dog's body. Now hurry up and go get us some ketchup. When the girl was bringing it to them, one of them tripped her foot and made her face fall down on the plate of sauce. The whole group burst into laughter. I rushed to help her up and scowled at the clique chic girls. They may have looked stylish, but beneath it all, they were monsters. But worst of all, it was my fault, as it was my group. I'd basically created them. What's wrong with her mom being a janitor? That doesn't mean she has to serve you guys. As I can see, all of your legs and arms are working fine. So go get stuff yourself. Wow, look who it is. Do you all believe she's just a lousy replica of mine now? The true clique chic Kate wouldn't blurt out such nonsense. Clique chic all looked me up and down, then gave me disgusted looks. Too much of a saint. What a hypocrite. Kate would never say that.
Obviously, she's the fake one.
Those whispers made me so angry that I turned as red as the ketchup. Fine, pretend to be me all you want, but you and I both know I'm the real me, and I'm better than ever. You won't be able to keep up that act for much longer. And then to the surprise of the others, I stormed off. That night, social media was awash with my news. Can you believe I was actually being mocked for being the copycat while Clara was being praised? Talk about ridiculous. I scrolled through my old photos and scanned over some of the thousands of likes and compliments. I'd lived in the admiration of everyone. Ugh. Maybe I needed to go back to being the arrogant and snobby old Kate, and then everything would be over, right? Only I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that heartless and selfish version of myself anymore. So how could I end this whole mess of my own making? There was another way. If there's only one Kate who showed up, there wouldn't be any more fakers. Oh, seems like it's going to be a really good day at school today. But such a shame that our sweet Clara might not be able to join us. Everyone greeted me warmly as they thought that the imposter who was smeared on social media yesterday had been too embarrassed to show her face. Even so, I didn't want to hang out with these stuck-up mean girls anymore. The clique chic group should be disbanded. As I was deep in thoughts, out of nowhere, a nerd blocked my way with a bouquet of flowers. He timidly held them out to me, and people began buzzing and pointing. The girls in the group took pictures of him and urged me forward. That's our Kate with her irresistible charms.
Someone's essay's ready for next week.
I hesitated, not knowing what to say. I didn't want to accept love from someone I didn't like. People started to frown at my silence. Then a few voices of doubt arose.
Why doesn't she accept the bouquet as usual?
Perhaps she's not? I saw red. Suddenly, I found this whole pretending to flirt with someone just to have them do our homework absurd. And above all else, it wasn't fair to him. You don't have the guts to do it, do you? Because you're not Kate. Startled, I turned around to see Clara taking the bouquet of flowers from the nerd's hand. I snatched it back angrily. He likes me, not you. He likes Kate, and I'm Kate. That Clara was just so shameless to say that. Did she really think she could be me? Did she think being mean and snobby made her the it girl? How shallow of her. Yes, if it was Kate from the past, I would have received that bouquet and made him do my homework. But the present Kate won't do that. Do it yourself. Stop relying on others to do everything for you. As for you, Clara, let me tell you this. Despite your best efforts, you'll never be me. Once a liar, always a liar, you counterfeit. I was done here. I was the real me, and if they couldn't see that, then whatever. So, I walked away. Suddenly, a hand pulled me back. It was the nerd. Sorry, but I really don't like you in that way.
You really don't have feelings for me? Are you sure?
Upon his words, he took off his wig, glasses, and the mole on his face. Bond? Is it really you? I was so shocked that I couldn't believe my eyes. Bond handed me the bouquet and said,
You won't say no, will you?
Of course. How could I say no? I led him to an empty classroom to talk. Why are you here?
And what's with the disguise? After I left the homestay, I went back home. My parents did what they always do and tried to make out like money could solve everything by throwing an extravagant party. I was lingering out of the way when, to my surprise, you walked in with your family.
Huh? What party? Oh, he must mean Clara. He continued.
I went over to talk to you, but you acted like you'd never met me before, so it didn't take me long to work out this girl wasn't you. I was worried, so I called the homestay and they said you'd left. Determined to solve this mystery, I went to your school and found everyone was in a frenzy, as out of nowhere 2 Kates had appeared. Both of them were it girls and nothing like the homestay Kate I knew. So, in order to suss out the real one, I disguised myself. And my plan worked. As here you are.
You're such a trickster! But I still have one question. Why did you suddenly leave the homestay that day? So, turns out his passion for marine life led him to run away from his disapproving parents and go to a coastal homestay. Only, when he realized from the newspaper that his parents were looking for him, he didn't want to get the homestay into trouble, so he returned home. You should have at least said goodbye to me. I was so down when you left like that. Did you know that?
Kate, I'm truly sorry. I never meant to upset you. Actually, I'm kinda crazy about you.
After that, Bond drove me home. And guess what? Looks like my parents were back earlier than expected. As for the fake Clara, she'd already fled the scene with a load of my clothes and makeup. But, whatever. At least she'd finally gone. So, what now? Well, I'm dating Bond, and I'm so happy with him. At weekends, I go to the coast and help him with his marine animal research, which is actually a lot of fun. And I don't even mind having salty air lips. I never take my parents for granted anymore, and I never force other students to carry out dumb errands for me. And of course, clique chic was no longer a thing. Everyone at school had grown used to the new and improved version of me. Obviously, I'll always be the it girl who sets the trends, but only the decent ones.